I should have known something would shift the moment I saw his name on the group chat invite list. I'd been to dozens of these weekend cabin getaways before. Same group of college friends, same inside jokes, same reliable chaos. But this one felt different, maybe because it had been a while. Or maybe because Luca was coming. Luca and I weren't strangers. Far from it. We'd been orbiting each other since sophomore year, always within arm's reach but never quite touching the same planet. He was the kind of friend you didn't just lose touch with. You remembered him when it rained, when a certain song came on, or when you found yourself smiling at texts from no one in particular. We'd talk now and then. Quick comments on Instagram, you still alive? Every few months, but nothing deep. Still, his name on that list made my chest tighten in a way I pretended not to notice. I leaned back in my chair and stared at the screen, my fingers hovering over the RSVP button. I told myself it was just another trip. Just a gathering. The drive up was long, the kind of stretch where you lose yourself in the hum of tires on asphalt and the hypnotic rhythm of pines swaying past the window. I had my music on shuffle, but somehow every song felt like a memory waiting to ambush me. I kept picturing Luca's face, not the one in his latest filtered beach post, but the version from late nights at the student cafe, leaning over a laptop, glasses slipping down his nose, laughing at one of my dumb jokes. The cabin sat at the edge of a lake, half swallowed by forest. It looked exactly like it had the last time we were all here, down to the crooked wind chime hanging on the porch and the worn path to the dock. I got there early, on purpose. I liked having a moment to breathe before the noise kicked in. I was setting down my duffel bag when I heard tires crunching on gravel. A car door slammed. Laughter. Voices. Then I heard his. And that's when my heart did that ridiculous thing where it skipped and stuttered like a bad signal trying to tune into something too important to miss. I didn't turn around right away. I needed a second. Because no matter how much I tried to act casual, I knew this weekend wasn't going to be just another gathering. And I had a feeling Luca would be the reason why. Luca looked exactly the same, disheveled curls pushed back under a beanie, hoodie sleeves too long for his arms, that ridiculous canvas tote bag he carried everywhere like it held state secrets. He was laughing at something Alex said, dimples flashing like they had a direct line to my bloodstream. Eli, he called when he spotted me. Just my name, no dramatic reunion, no long pause. But his smile lingered a second too long, and something in his voice softened, like he hadn't realized he missed me until right then. Still alive, huh? I said, leaning against the porch post like I hadn't been pacing 5 minutes before his car pulled in. Barely. Your taste in music almost killed me last time we road tripped. He grinned, walking up the steps. Still listening to sad indie boys with banjos? Still pretending to hate them while secretly adding them to your playlist, I shot back. And just like that we were back. Luca and I had never been the kind of friends who needed constant contact. We'd had moments instead, bursts of connection that left marks, even if they didn't last long. A drunken night on the campus roof sophomore year, trading secrets under stars. A shared playlist that quietly grew over months. Study sessions that turned into hour-long debates about things like whether waffles were superior to pancakes. They are. It was easy with him. Effortless. Dangerous. That night, the group gathered in the main living room, the fireplace crackling, a half-circle of bodies sprawled on mismatched cushions and couches. I ended up next to Luca on the floor, our knees brushing. Neither of us moved. We passed a bag of popcorn between us, silently competing over the pieces with extra caramel. He shot me a triumphant look when he snagged the last one. "You're the worst," I muttered, nudging his shoulder. "You love it." My breath caught a little. He didn't notice, or pretended not to. Later, while people picked bedrooms, chaos broke out. Who packed the sleeping bag bin?" Jamie called from the back hallway. The pause. "No one," she said again louder. Of course. We'd all assumed someone else brought extras. Turned out the cabin only had 5 actual beds and 2 couches, and someone was definitely sleeping on the floor. "Shotgun couch," I said quickly, avoiding the cold hardwood. "Guess I'm on the floor," Luca sighed, but there wasn't a hint of annoyance in his voice. Just resignation and something playful behind his smirk. I hesitated. "You know it's a big couch." And we've survived worse, I said casually, trying not to sound like I was auditioning for a rom-com. Luca looked at me, eyebrows raised. Then he smiled. Just don't kick me in your sleep, El. I wanted to say something smart. Teasing. Deflective. But my mind had stalled on the way he said my name. He rarely shortened it. When he did, it meant something. Even if I wasn't sure what. That night, after everyone else had gone to bed and the fire had dimmed to embers, we lay on opposite ends of the couch. Barely enough room. Our legs tangled by accident, or not. His sock brushed against my ankle, and neither of us moved away. You remember that night on the roof? He asked suddenly into the quiet. I nodded, even though he couldn't see me. Yeah. I think about it sometimes. You said something about wanting to leave the city and live in a cabin like this. I said I wanted to disappear and write moody poems in the woods. Same thing. We both laughed softly. His foot nudged mine. Gentle. Deliberate. Maybe it wasn't such a bad idea. I turned my head, trying to make out his expression in the shadows. But I didn't need to see him to feel it. The shift in the air, the way something long dormant between us had stirred and stretched like it was waking up. And in that moment, I wasn't sure if I wanted the weekend to end at all. It started raining sometime around midnight on the second day. Not a soft drizzle or poetic mist. This was relentless, sideways, sheets of water kind of rain. It pounded the lake, soaked the trees, and turned the dirt paths around the cabin into slippery, sludgy death traps. I watched it from the front porch, arms crossed over my chest, hoodie pulled tight around me. We'd planned a hike for that morning, some scenic trail a few miles out. Obviously canceled. The others retreated inside, resigned to board games and half-hearted movies. By late afternoon, cabin fever had set in. That's when the power cut out. The lights blinked, flickered, and then, gone. Just like that, no Wi-Fi, no heat, no overhead lighting. Only the fireplace and our collective sarcasm to keep us alive. This is like the beginning of every bad horror movie, someone joked. Nervous laughter followed. Only horror here is Eli trying to cook breakfast, Luca said behind me. I turned, smirking. Says the guy who once set off a fire alarm boiling water. He was close. Closer than I expected. His breath ghosted the air between us, warm and honeyed with whatever spice cider he'd been sipping. His eyes were darker in the dim light, his hair still damp from running out to grab more firewood earlier. Drops clung to his curls like they belonged there. Touché, he said, then reached out casually, too casually, and flicked a leaf from my shoulder. You've got nature clinging to you. I froze just for a beat. His fingers grazed the curve of my shoulder. My skin remembered it long after he dropped his hand. We ended up clustered in the living room again, everyone wrapped in blankets, huddled around the fire. Someone suggested ghost stories. Of course they did. And of course Luca volunteered to go fetch extra candles from the storage shed out back. Not it, I said immediately. He turned to me, eyes twinkling. Come on. You're the main character energy here. You can't let me die alone. Fine. But if I vanish, I expect a tragic poem written in my honor. Already started it, he said over his shoulder as we pulled on raincoats. The wind howled through the trees as we made the short, miserable trek to the shed. Our boots sank into the mud, our flashlights barely cutting through the curtain of rain. When we reached the tiny structure, half shed, half overgrown lean-to, it took all our strength to force the door open against the wind. We tumbled in breathless, soaked, and laughing like idiots. That's when the door slammed shut behind us. And didn't open again. Luca tried it first. Then I did. The wood had swollen in the rain, jamming the frame. We were locked in a pitch-dark shed the size of a walk-in closet. Seriously? I groaned, running a hand through my wet hair. This is how I die. Could be worse, Luca said. You could be stuck with someone who doesn't know your coffee order. I gave a short laugh, but it caught in my throat. The space was so small. Our shoulders brushed every time we moved. His knee pressed lightly against mine when he shifted to sit down. I couldn't see much beyond the faint glow of his flashlight, but I could feel everything. The silence stretched. I stole glances at him, at the way he rubbed his hands together for warmth, at the way his lips curved when he smiled into the dim light. There was something achingly familiar about him. But something new, too. Or maybe I was just finally letting myself see it. I used to think, I said suddenly, surprising even myself, that you flirted with everyone. He looked up, blinking. I don't. No. He shook his head slowly. No. Not really. Something in my chest shifted. I looked away, biting the inside of my cheek. I flirt with you, he added quietly. But I think you knew that. My stomach flipped. And for a moment, all I could hear was the rain, and my heart, and the electric crackle of something unnamed sitting between us. I didn't know what to say. I wanted to joke it off, toss out some witty deflection like I always did. But the air felt too real, too charged. My mouth opened, then closed. Luca leaned back against the wall beside me, his shoulder resting lightly against mine. His voice was quieter now, softer than I'd ever heard it. I don't know what this is, Eli. I just know I've thought about you. More than I should have. The flashlight flickered. We both looked down at it, grateful for the distraction. When our eyes met again, his expression had changed, no longer playful, but open in a way that made my breath catch. My hand was resting between us, palm up. He didn't say anything as he reached for it. His fingers brushed mine. Tentative. Testing. And then, finally, they laced through. A shiver ran through me that had nothing to do with the cold. I wanted this. I wanted him. But I was terrified of what it would mean, if this weekend unraveled into something we couldn't walk away from unchanged. But when he gave my hand the slightest squeeze, and looked at me like he was scared too, I realized we were already past that point. And maybe, just maybe, that wasn't such a bad thing. Eventually, someone noticed we were gone. The door gave way with a stubborn crack after 20 minutes of pushing and cursing on both ends, and when the flashlight beams from our friends hit us, we were still sitting shoulder to shoulder on the shed floor, soaked and quiet. We blamed the rain, the jammed door, the damp wood. Not the still intertwined fingers we barely separated in time. The rest of the night passed in a blur, blankets, dry clothes, someone triumphantly reviving the generator. Everyone settled into sleepy, fire-lit comfort again, but I felt like I was watching it all through a filter. Luca and I didn't talk about what had happened. We didn't need to. Not yet. But I couldn't sleep. He was next to me again on the couch, just like the first night, but closer. His legs tangled with mine now like it was the most natural thing in the world. Every time he shifted or breathed or exhaled too close to my neck, I felt it, something fragile and raw pressing against the inside of my ribs. Around 2 a.m., I gave up pretending to sleep and slipped out from under the blanket. I padded toward the kitchen for a glass of water, heart thudding against the silence. I didn't expect him to follow. You okay? His voice was low, a little husky from sleep. Couldn't sleep. He nodded. Me either. We stood there in the dark kitchen, the only light coming from the moon slicing through the window over the sink. Outside, the storm had passed, but everything still felt drenched and heavy. He stepped closer. You've been quiet since the shed, he said. I stared at the condensation on the glass in my hand. I don't know what to say. He leaned against the counter beside me. You always know what to say. I laughed softly. Not when it matters. Luca turned toward me, arms crossed. Then say what you're thinking. Just say it, Eli. Please. I set the glass down. My hands were trembling, just enough for me to notice. I've been thinking about you for a long time, I said. And I've been trying to convince myself it's not like that. That it's just nostalgia or a crush that got away or whatever story I could tell myself to avoid this. He didn't say anything, so I kept going. The words were already spilling out, raw and unfiltered. But when we were in that shed, when you touched my hand, it felt like everything I've been avoiding just cracked open. And I'm scared because I don't know what happens next. I don't know what this means for us. What if we try and it ruins everything? What if I lose you? The silence that followed was deafening. I hated myself for saying too much, for being too vulnerable. I looked away, gripping the edge of the counter like it could anchor me. Then his hand landed gently over mine. I'm scared too, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. You think I haven't had the same thoughts? You think I haven't played out every scenario in my head where we try this and it all falls apart? I looked at him then. His expression was open, unguarded in a way I'd never seen before. But I also think, he continued, that we've been dancing around this for so long, pretending we don't see it. And I'm tired, Eli. I'm tired of pretending. His thumb moved across the back of my hand. A slow, grounding gesture. I think I've been waiting for you, he said. Even when we weren't talking much, even when you disappeared for weeks or months. You'd text me some dumb meme, and I'd smile like an idiot. And I'd wait for the next one. And the next. I blinked hard, trying not to let the emotions swell too quickly. I wanted to reach out more, I admitted. But I thought maybe you'd moved on. I never moved on, he said. Because you were never something I could move on from. The room felt suspended in that moment. Like the rest of the world had gone still, so this could finally happen. I took a step closer. His breath hitched. There was a pause, not awkward, not tense, but loaded with the kind of weight that only comes when two people realize they're standing on the edge of something irreversible. I'm still scared, I whispered. Me too. But I want this. Then take it. I didn't know who moved first, maybe it was both of us at the same time, but suddenly we were kissing. It wasn't perfect. Our noses bumped, and we both half laughed, half sighed, and then his hands were in my hair and mine were on his waist and everything melted into warmth and yes and finally. His lips were soft and insistent, tasting like mint and something sweeter I couldn't name. When we pulled apart, our foreheads pressed together, breaths mingling. That was overdue, he murmured. I smiled, dizzy in the best way. Yeah, just a little. We stayed like that for a while, our bodies close, our fingers entwined. No more rushing. No more pretending. Just us, in the soft quiet of the kitchen, with the hum of the fridge finally coming back to life and the storm fading into memory. When we returned to the couch, we didn't separate. We lay down, facing each other, his fingers tracing patterns on my arm like he was learning me in real time. We didn't say much. We didn't need to. The silence between us now was full of everything we hadn't been able to say before, and the relief of finally saying it. I drifted off like that, with his breath on my skin, his hand around mine, and the terrifying, beautiful realization that nothing was ever going to be the same. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't want it to be. The next morning, I woke up with Luca's arms slung around my waist and his forehead pressed against the back of my neck. It took me a second to remember where I was. Then it hit me all at once. His breath, slow and even, the rhythm of his chest rising behind mine, the phantom echo of his lips on mine from hours ago. I didn't move. I just let myself feel it. There was a quiet sort of joy pulsing through me. The kind that doesn't scream or demand attention, but hums beneath the skin like it's been waiting there forever. Eventually, Luca stirred. He mumbled, voice thick with sleep. Still here. I smiled, even though he couldn't see it. Not a dream then. He stretched, his leg tangling more firmly around mine. If it is, don't wake me up. We stayed wrapped up like that for another few minutes before I rolled to face him. His hair was a chaotic mess, and his eyes were still half-lidded with sleep, but the smile he gave me was real. Quiet. A little shy. I should have kissed you years ago, he said. Yeah, well, I teased. You didn't exactly make it obvious you were waiting. His brows lifted. Eli, I once sent you a playlist called Songs I'd Play If I Were in Love With You But Too Chicken to Say It Out Loud. I blinked. I thought that was a joke. He gave me a look. Did you listen to the lyrics? No, I burst into laughter, burying my face in the pillow. God, I'm an idiot. An adorable idiot, he said, and kissed my cheek like he'd been doing it forever. The shift between us was subtle but seismic. Where there had once been invisible lines, drawn and redrawn over years of caution, they were gone now. He brushed his thumb along the side of my hand as we got dressed. Slid glances at me when he thought I wasn't looking. Sat so close during breakfast that our knees touched under the table and neither of us moved away. And our friends noticed. Becca gave me a slow, knowing smirk. Chris raised an eyebrow so high I thought it might fly off his face. No one said anything, but I knew the second Luca stood up to grab more coffee and instinctively ruffled my hair on the way past, the secret was out. I didn't care. Later, we snuck away from the noise of the living room, climbing the creaky attic stairs to the loft that overlooked the lake. The rain had stopped. Sunlight spilled through the slats in fractured golden stripes, and outside, the forest looked like it had just exhaled. I leaned against the railing. Luca came up beside me, his shoulder brushing mine. "So," he said, "what now?" I hesitated. "You mean after this weekend?" He nodded. "I don't know," I admitted. "I go back to the city. You've got your job, your schedule, real life starts again." "Yeah." He was quiet a moment, then looked at me. "But I don't want this to be a weekend thing." My heart clenched. "Neither do I." "Then let's not let it be." He reached for my hand, held it easily, like he'd done it 1,000 times. "We figure it out. Maybe it's messy. Maybe it's hard. But I'm in if you are." I turned to face him fully. "I'm in." He smiled then, full and radiant, the kind of smile that knocks the air out of your lungs. "You're really bad at noticing playlists though," he added. I laughed and leaned in, resting my forehead against his. "Then you'll just have to keep making them until I get the hint." His lips brushed mine again, soft and slow, like a promise. And this time, I kissed him back without hesitation. The weekend ended too soon, like it always does when something important begins. Sunday afternoon arrived with half-packed bags, the scent of leftover pancakes clinging to the kitchen, and the quiet hum of people saying goodbyes they didn't entirely mean. Luca and I hadn't talked much about what we were. Not in labels or declarations. But we didn't need to. The way he reached for my hand as we stood outside the cabin, waiting for our rideshare, fingers intertwining so naturally it felt inevitable, was enough. He kept my hand in his even as our friends lingered awkwardly nearby. Becca winked as she loaded her backpack into Chris's trunk. "About time," she muttered in passing, loud enough for us to hear. Luca just grinned. I tried to hide my blush behind a laugh. The car ride back was quiet in the best way. We didn't fill the silence with small talk. We just leaned against each other, sharing earbuds like we used to in college, the music a low pulse between us. It was the same playlist, the one he'd made that I'd stupidly thought was a joke. Now, every lyric hit differently. When we reached the city, the air was louder, heavier. The buzz of traffic, the blur of people walking like they had somewhere better to be. My chest tightened a little at the thought of returning to my routine, to days where I might not wake up to his breath against my neck or his sleepy mumbles in the kitchen. He must have felt it too. As we stood on the sidewalk, his hands still wrapped around mine, he gave me a look, steady, certain. "You want to come over?" he asked, casual, but there was something deeper beneath it. I smiled. "Yeah, I do." He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled something out, a folded piece of notebook paper. I recognized the torn edge immediately. It was from the stack we kept at the cabin for board game scores and doodles. "I was gonna leave this in your bag," he said, a little sheepish. "But since we're doing this, might as well read it now." I opened it. Inside, in his messy scrawl, were the words, "You make everything feel like coming home." I stared at it for a long second, the lump in my throat making it hard to speak. "I didn't know how else to say it," he added. "So I wrote it down instead." I folded the note carefully, like it was something fragile and precious. "You don't need to say anything," he said quickly, nerves flickering in his eyes. I cut him off with a kiss. "So, certain." And when I pulled back, I pressed my forehead to his, whispering, "Then let's keep coming home to each other." His breath caught. He nodded. We walked the rest of the block hand in hand. Not rushing. Not afraid. At the crosswalk, he bumped my shoulder gently. "By the way," he said, "I've already got a new playlist in progress." I laughed. "Let me guess, the sequel?" "It's called Songs for the Boy Who Finally Noticed." I shook my head, grinning. "God, you're such a dork." "Yeah," he said, squeezing my hand. "But I'm your dork now." And just like that, with the city alive around us and the future wide open in front of us, I knew. This wasn't the end of our story. It was only the beginning.